Ab antiquo. UAP biology, these individuals aren't crazy. Their brains show physical changes consistent with extreme energy exposure. A therianthrope is a creature that can shapeshift into an animal, or is part human and part animal. The parable of the pearl of great price. 45 Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls. 46 Who, when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. The term demon is derived from the Greek word daimon, which means a supernatural being, or spirit. The term originally meant a spiritual being that influenced a person's character. And agathos daimon, good spirit. As every Mesopotamian city was the seat and dominion of a single divinity in the pantheon, all the cities together were a reflected image of the starry sky on the earth's surface.
15.
The Mesopotamian city, represented by its king, who was the only intermediary between ordinary humans and the gods, had a constructed, divine task, to unite all other cities under one rule and copy the heavenly pantheon on earth. The first king to accomplish such a tremendous task was Sargon of Akkad. God's original plan, which is inclusive. In Christian angelology, seraphim are considered the highest-ranking celestial beings within the hierarchy of angels. It is important to note this species is seen as a serpent or dragon, also called a flying serpent or javelin. So the bad one within the old text was just one of these beings from that species, so the dragon and the serpent do not mean bad or devil but rather guards and keepers of knowledge. In artistic representations, 4-winged cherubim are often painted blue to symbolize the sky, while 6-winged seraphim are depicted in red to symbolize fire. The Hebrew word, mophfjpvfm or seraph, 1429 and 30:6. The polal indicates an intensive of the root pvf, of that means to fly or flutter. The flying serpent has been known throughout time, from the creation story to the hero's journey, and appears in various biblical and historical texts, even making appearances in other creation stories such as those from China and Mexico. The snake in history has always had positive associations, being an animal of the ground. It implies that a person who digs and keeps moving deeper into knowledge. It states in the Naked Bible, pages 83 of 84 by Mauro Biglino, that the term snake actually means possessor of knowledge. Today it symbolizes those who handle this kind of information and possess this type of technology. The serpent Mehen is depicted as coiling around the sun god Ra's solar bark, protecting him as he journeys through the underworld. Some depictions of Mehen involve cosmic or otherworldly flight. It is important to note, you may have had personal experiences to which many others relate and understand. This implies that there might be a degree of universality to your own experiences, and if so, then maybe those experiences tap into an aspect of reality that is intersubjectively verifiable and therefore objective and probably true. The problem with a religious experience is that it is difficult to grasp in language. For example, Indo-European languages rely on abstract nouns to understand something. Accordingly, someone's home is defined as a house. Yet the concept or abstract noun house leaves behind many unique features of their home, e.g., heritage property, mantelpiece, porch and gardens. When that home is identified with the concept house, it loses one sense of meaning for the sake of another. Moreover, at the level of concepts, there seems to be an opposite for just about every word or term, e.g., large and small, tall and short, pleasure and pain. But as the video in Unit 3 pointed out, the things you experience and touch are not defined by those opposites, e.g., the lamp on your desk. Instead, actual things are a perfect assembly of many causes, reasons, factors, that superimpose themselves one another until there is this thing, lamp. Does this mean that the nature of reality revealed in a religious experience is beyond language? The theory of complementarity means that contradictions or contrasts also cohere with one another. This sounds like yin and yang in Taoism, the human and divine nature of Christ among several other paradoxes in religions. What paradoxes besides the symbolism given by Men and Elohim, of the world such as moral immortal, just sinner, loving wrathful God? In this case, religious insights into the nature of reality prefigure discoveries of modern physicists. However, there is a difference. Whereas the way keyword path Tao, the way in Taoism refers to the dialectical structure of reality, and the similarly, the unity of two natures in one Christ refers to an actual person for Christians, or thought that complementarity and contrast applied to language alone. In other words, he did not believe that reality of light itself was infused with a paradoxical nature, and instead, that light itself was beyond language. 10. Whether light is a particle, or a wave is a function of the instrument we use to examine it, language. Bohr was trying to say, and I use this example not only because it is tangible but also because these various religions all have been incorporating the spiritual principles without actually practicing the universality within them that of being created by some higher form of being who seems to evidently be the creator of this realm, the one over all. Truly there is no name who could use for such a being, but we attempt to with the word and terms such as God. Although the word God is not translated correctly, and has led to the worship of minor deities otherwise known as Elohim in our biblical text alien in or worldly context today. If the essence of reality is beyond language, then the world we create with language, and everything we think we understand in language including names for things, explanations about contrasts and coherence is an illusion. Another example is, one of Staver's arguments, is about understanding reality as it is. He further argues that science tends to understand reality rather than spiritual reality, but religion is about spirituality in the reality. In this argument Staver brings three important ideas: consciousness, vision, and quantum mechanics to make the point that reality may not be knowable. The discord between science and religion is not about which can produce more objective knowledge of the reality. Instead, the discord is a confrontation between two different cultural ways of seeing and knowing the world, but neither science nor religion can claim to represent reality. Therefore, a social constructivist epistemology may be a useful means to reduce discord between science and religion, as it allows realities from both perspectives to exist. Phenomenology is a powerful research approach that seeks to understand the essence of lived experiences across multiple individuals, making it especially valuable in psychology and consciousness studies. Rather than focusing on external behaviors or generalized data, phenomenology dives into the subjective, first-person perspective, how people actually experience a phenomenon in their own minds and emotions. This method allows researchers to uncover rich, nuanced insights into how individuals make sense of complex or extraordinary events, such as trauma, spiritual awakenings, or encounters with the unknown. By identifying shared themes and patterns across different personal accounts, phenomenology helps reveal the core structures of human experience, offering a deeper understanding of motivations, beliefs, and emotional responses. It also challenges conventional assumptions by emphasizing meaning-making and intentionality, showing how consciousness is always directed towards something and shaped by context. In psychological research, this approach is especially useful for exploring areas that are deeply personal and existential, such as identity, grief, transformation, or anomalous experiences, making it a vital tool for studying UAP contacts and other experiences whose realities defy easy categorization. Science and quantum mechanics. For example, one of the major obstacles that quantum mechanics had to overcome during its early years before Copenhagen interpretation was how to explain reality at the subatomic levels, because the classical view of science and the language within it failed to explain phenomenon. The Hindu Vedanta perspective, philosophical teaching, Brahman is the ultimate reality. Brahman is the origin of physical, moral, or spiritual activity, and the Brahman manifests. John Macquarie proposes a dialectical theism in order to correct the mistakes of classical theism, which describes God one-sidedly, for instance, stressing the divine transcendence at the expense of the divine immanence. 45 He says, "When I speak of dialectical theism, I am not thinking of some weak compromise. Dialectic is to be understood in the strong sense of the clash of opposites. For instance, God is not half transcendent and half immanent, but wholly transcendent and wholly immanent." This may sound like a contradiction. It is so in terms of the logic of finite. Irving Finkel, in his book The First Ghost at page 77, states some interesting resemblances between what they knew as ghosts and gods. That the flashes and flickers are whose gods, who are Bennu, the watcher of the night, who constantly scratch like a wolf, who constantly flashed like lightning, who constantly flicker like a flame, constantly like the flag, he constantly shine like daylight, constantly shining like a star, word constantly obscured like a black spot, you are constantly overwhelming like a Lu demon, who constantly pick on your victims like an Alu demon. It goes on to state more through these 80+ lines, mainly referring to these as a form of exorcism. Nonetheless, the description and depiction are still seen more prevalently today. Demon Tablet 2 Section 2. The concept of war in ancient Mesopotamia. After the basic order was set, Marduk fought the goddess Tiamat, chaos, and established out of her remaining body the sea and land. Humankind had its own special place in this mythology, as the human individual was the only creature enabled with Temu, which can be translated to intellect or wit. As Pietro Mander writes, it is thereby possible to conclude that although the divine realm never manifested materially, it was real through the constructed interaction of everyday Akkadians. As the symbolical meaning of Temu was compared to the brightness of the stars, this spiral of conflict ended with the Akkadian king, who ultimately became a star after their death, and was the sole human being to have a permanent place in the universe. Point 14.
Some terminologies in relation to UEP and why they matter.
Phenomenology is a powerful research approach that seeks to understand the essence of lived experiences across multiple individuals, making it especially valuable in psychology and consciousness studies. Ak in Egyptian religion, the spirit of a deceased person, and with the Ka and the Ba. A principal aspect of the soul. By enabling the soul to assume temporarily any form it desired for the purpose of revisiting the earth, or for its own enjoyment, the Ak characterized the soul of a deceased person as an effective entity in the next world.
Malaka is an active manifests man's dominion over nature.
Agathos daimon Greek, Gamma Alpha Theta Delta Alpha Mu Omega Nu, Agathos daimon, lit. Noble spirit originally was a lesser deity. Ba in ancient Egyptian religion, with the Ka and the Ak, a principal aspect of the soul. Ka most commonly refers to the vital life force or spiritual double in ancient Egyptian beliefs, one of the key components of the soul, representing life energy, personal traits. Genius loci is a fascinating concept from Roman mythology that refers to the protective spirit of a place. I.e. House of the Vedii, 2 dancing Laras, the family's protective gods. Therianthrope is a creature that can shapeshift into an animal, or is part human and part animal. Shemhainfarash, which is the name of the ranking system used in the heavens. Naga, dragon or serpent, water angels. Yaka or Yaksha, these are what we know typically as demons. Pratha, this is the hungry ghost, the ones that could be harmful. Bahirawa, gnomes. Azura, ocean angels, otherwise known as heavenly beings. Mara, the ones they have listed as the bad ones. Jiwata translation, it shall be known. Hebrew. Ruach translation meaning spirit. Hebrew. Spirit, Oklahest. Abraxas, basic talisman typically made from stone. Used mainly by alphabet angels. Sakinat, the divine presence. The Shekinah, meaning which see. Sakti, the female energy of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. The Seraphim, Isaiah 6. Name meaning, burning ones from Hebrew Serap. Sephora, the name of the wife to Moses. Sit lux et lux fiat, let there be light. Soli sanctissimo sacrum, sacred to the most holy Son. Stellato sedet solo, he sits alone on his starry throne. Adagiber lolam Adonai, thou art mighty forever, O Lord. Ensof, the phrase means intellectual light. Galzu hybrid sometimes visits in visions normally to cause change or order commands. Rabboni translates to master. Kavod, glory, is a powerful object and is used as a weapon sometimes. Theoi, gods. Keruvim, the act of covering. Michael, first commander. Theos, god. Deos, mainly female gods. Entoptic, from Greece, it describes a phenomena that is experienced as a visual in the mind but not seen with the use of the eyes. Ekstasis, Greek term which means to stand outside or transcend oneself. Unmitigated by thought, word, or reflection, simply put, union with the One. Waxed strong in spirit is a biblical expression, most famously found in the Gospel of Luke, Luke 1 verse 80 and Luke 2 verse 40 in the King James Version. Wax means to grow or to increase. The relevant Greek words used by Josephus in this narrative are rho pi epsilon tau nu, or erpaton, which means reptile, and phi epsilon omega nu, or ophis, which means snakes. Ouroboros in Egyptian mythology was one of the symbols of the sun, as it represented the journeys of Aten, the solar disk in Egyptian mythology. In addition to that, Ouroboros represented rebirth, recreation of life and perpetuity. Bacchis, ancient Greek, beta omicron upsilon chi iota, Coptic, one also spelt Bach and Baka, was the deification of the K, power, life force, Egyptological pronunciation Ka. The Bacchis was also identified with the Apis bull and considered an incarnation of Osiris, linking it to themes of kingship and the afterlife. The term demon is derived from the Greek word daimon, which means a supernatural being, or spirit. The term originally meant a spiritual being that influenced a person's character. An agathos daimon, good spirit, for example, was benevolent in its relationship to humans. The Greek philosopher Socrates, for example, spoke of his daimon as a spirit that inspired him to seek and speak the truth. Are the spiritual realms real? The answer is yes. There's no need for maybe or we need more proof. There is a spirit world. The real question is whether we can use the mechanics behind it to understand ourselves better and improve our world, or if this knowledge is too troubling for us to accept. I am unsure how others might feel, but I can assume it will be difficult for many to come to terms with this. This is likely why quantum physics is studying these matters in order to provide a reasonable explanation to the public in due time. Thoughts. While everything may not or cannot be known, at least by my limited mind I can deduce the obvious recurrence in history and sudden appearance of these beings, I would also conclude other experiencers may be able to do the same. It's important to note that contact with these beings will leave psychological effects that if unchecked could be considered unhealthy. The effect I have witnessed and read about, if the psychological effect have feeling the urge or need to do something or be on some kind of mission is the words that would be typically used. To those types I would recommend no action like the Tao. I've realized that all religions share core elements, but people often refuse to look beyond personal beliefs shaped by misinformation or their surroundings. I.e., current environment. Above we have already mentioned there is types of being, and even in order to the hierarchy the most important thing I have found that may be of value to some is that the story is older than just the Bible itself. I believe all of them are claiming the same spiritual ideas over our entire history. As a reminder, there is one creator over all who is unnamed. All others are less beings, or Elohim, aka angels, or by today's standards referred to as alien. Above I mention Egypt and Mesopotamia. This is for one reason, to draw the connection towards their beliefs and practices during those times. If we look at this objectively, we find they also had protective spirits and gods for local areas, and as I just mentioned a second ago, that was to draw the change in terminology throughout the ages. But is it that simple? They want us basically to understand there is more to this world and realm than we fully grasp. Is it really just to remind the individual as a reward or public of the existence of these realms and historical facts in which we call myths and religions from time to time? That is, if they last long enough historically to make it past the cult phase, that is. To tie these notions into one belief, we can see examples of Psalm 82 in its original translation. We can also look other verse such as Luke 1 verses 26 to 38, and we can compare that Elohim to the Muslim belief system and faith due to the same Elohim being the one they both claim to have met historically. This is where, to save the viewer time, I will skip to the part where if you encounter one of these Elohim or aliens, and it was validated in historically times, and you were said to have had seen God. This document aims to simplify the topic. Abrahamic land deals began when God instructed Abraham to leave Mesopotamia with his family and journey to the land he promised, eventually settling in Canaan after Terah's death. While Genesis 11 credits Terah with leading the move from Ur, Acts 7 clarifies that God appeared to Abraham in Mesopotamia. The formation of the 12 tribes reflects individual contacts and categories within these historical events. There is many ways to explain these ideas and concepts. Nonetheless, some experiencers may be dealing with spiritual encounters and just because it's spiritual it doesn't mean you pick the one you were taught as a child, and that's it, you're done, but rather look around and compare these historical works. In the process you change your mind and behavior. It's possible you may also make the connections simply based on the descriptions, and you will not find a definitive answer you want and will likely be left with doubt. It may be useful to remember the evidence you already received. Authors encounter which lead to this research and direction taken.
April 18, 2022. Time * 2:16 a.m. Location * Brantford, Ontario. The Flying Women and a Flying Serpent. There is a lot of background leading up to this close flyby event, so I will keep this description brief. That evening, I was doing some translation and history homework, tracking the usual research journey that many experience. My ongoing project involves separating fake narratives in historical texts from the spiritual teachings that are typically hidden within them. After a while, I decided to take a break. I watched a show whose title I don't recall and enjoyed lamb chops cooked in a bit of olive oil, ensuring they were well done with no trace of blood. However, I soon grew bored and went into the backyard to watch the sky. I thought it was 11 p.m. when I stepped outside, but I don't remember being out there for long. Not long after I went out, I heard a bang, and 2 small pinkish-red orbs flew overhead. They began to take shape into beings. The one on the right was a woman dressed in an old-fashioned black dress. She appeared in a dimensional form, quite different from a human, though she had similar features. She was about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, had big brown eyes and a small mouth, and was barefoot. Her toes had some kind of black markings or camouflage. To her left was a serpent, or, in this case, a dragon, as it was flying, which reminded me of the flying serpents depicted in ancient Egypt and Greece. He was around 3 feet in length with bright green skin, and he floated alongside her. His pupils were completely black, with no color in his eyes other than in the center. They took form as they flew over my body while I was lying in the hammock, watching the sky. The 2 of them made eye contact with me as they looked down to the left while I looked upward at them, facing slightly left. Over her eyes formed a camouflage or mask in the form of a triangle, 3 of them from the left ear to the right pointing upwards. They then accelerated, creating a spiral design to the left before shooting upward into the sky, leaving a light trail behind them. I reached for my cell phone and took a picture of the light trail. It didn't come out well in the photo, but it serves its purpose to document the time, date, and location of the event. I used AI to create an image close to the beings I saw.
Frameworks and translation cues.